Right, I've just completed my control box for the Chinese Mini Lathe and I've connected it up to my VFD control unit. And in this video I'm going to show you how easy it is to actually convert over to an auxiliary control unit if you have the XSY-81 VFD inverter. And the electronic components you need to actually have an on-off switch, a forward and reverse switch, and the 10k potentiometer speed control. And a bit later in the video I'll show you how you can actually use 7-core cable like this one here, the components on the table, to actually wire the VFD up, and I'll show the full wiring for those components so you can actually do the same modification if you want to for your machine. So I'm not going to show how to wire the VFD to the mains or the 3-phase motor. I've already shown that in another video. This is about the auxiliary block at the top here and actually connecting it to the external controls. So firstly, I've got the original Chinese Mini Lathe control box and I've covered it in brass on the front and on the top side here, and I use this tool here to actually cut the brass. It's a nibbler tool which goes on an ordinary electric drill, and you get this adapter here which you can hold the nibbler in so you can actually hold it in a bench vise. I've screwed mine onto a piece of plywood with a block on there, and I actually use it in my bench vise for cutting plate like this, and it's an excellent tool. And then I covered both sides with the high quality outside gaffer tape, and I've cut some diagonal cuts in that, and that's to go over the actual lead screw when it's actually on the lathe. I then got some switches from Banggood. This is an ordinary on-off switch, it's not a no volt release switch. Made the cutout obviously on the top here for this part here. That drops down on the plate, and then you can drill and put a couple of bolts and nuts to actually bolt that one on. Then for the forward and reverse you only need an on-off switch like that. And then this 10k pot or potentiometer which I bought from Banggood. This is an excellent potentiometer and it's designed for these VFDs and other equipment. What I like about this one here is the fact that it has a terminal block inside, so there's no need for soldering, and the actual terminals are clearly marked up on the side here so you don't get mixed up when wiring it up. So that's what mine looks like, fully wired up now inside, and I'll show you how to do all this a bit later on the bench. When it's finished, I've labelled everything up so that if I actually take it off in the future, I can just quickly put the wires back in the joiners or whatever, and I actually won't get mixed up on that wiring at all. So So now that's what it looks like disconnected, and it is actually really best to actually do the connections with the VFD on the bench like this, on a nice clean bench. When you actually look in on this block here, you'll find that it's very difficult to actually see the numbers on that block unless you use a magnifying glass. And I also take this cover right off when doing the connections, so you can just about see in that one there now. The actual connector block does cover the connection numbers in that part way, so like I say, use a magnifying glass. But I've actually clearly put it on a piece of paper here. This is the top of the VFD, and these are all the connections which I'll show you later, and how to wire those up to the actual switches or whatever. Another thing that I had to do on this control box here is to actually file out the location holes so that there's a slot there, keyhole slot, and I put a couple of studs in the machine where the screws used to go, Loctited those in with Loctite 638, and then I've got a couple of washers on there so that when I put the control box on, I can actually slide it up under those washers and then tighten the nuts down with a spanner. And you can see why I had to do that, because I couldn't actually get to those screws with this switch in the way. Another thing, I've put the switch with the obviously the stop switch nearer to the actual chuck, and obviously quick and easy to get to. I could have put the switch on the front face, but I actually do like it on the top. And another thing, I put a long screw down through the switch there, and on the underside of that one I put a nut and a large washer, and then I put this cord around that under the washer there with a loop. I've put a 5mm Allen bolt in the existing hole in the headstock there with another large washer. And this is so that when I actually put the control box on, I can actually put the loop around under that washer, and it's the same under the one on the control box. And then I can actually leave it on the machine like that when I'm actually doing the connections without the control box falling about or falling off. And it's ideas like this that makes life so much easier when you're doing things like this. So after wiring it up on the bench, I left the wiring connected to the VFD, and then I've put the control box on there like that. I've fed the wire down through the gap here where the original wiring came through, under the lead screw, and then I've connected it all up. And if you label things up like this and use colour-coded wire, it only takes a matter of minutes to actually wire it all together. So everything is connected up and I've tested it, it's ready to go. So now I'll switch the VFD on at the wall. And I had to change the program in the VFD. There's two parameters that need altering, so that you change the control from this panel here over to the actual control box. And I'll show you how to do that later. So when that's done, this little keypad here no longer works. You can press any of those buttons there and turn the potentiometer up, and there's no response at all. All the response is on the actual control box with the other switches. So to turn on, and obviously this is the forward and reverse, I've got it in forward, and then turn the potentiometer up for the speed. And I can also still go straight into reverse. and I'm very pleased with that. So now I'll go in and show you how to wire up the VFD to those switches or whatever using my spare VFD. Right, to make the video quick and to make it very easy for everyone, I've got my spare VFD here, and I've stuck this cardboard on here with the terminals marked up, and this is the exact relation to the multi-terminal block in the top here with the 12 terminals. And you have COM, SP1, 10 volt, 5 volt, VL1, C1, COM, X1, X2, X3, X4, X5, X6 and 15 volt terminal on the right hand side. So on the left here first we have the COM terminal, and I chose the white wire in my 7 core cable to connect to the COM. So the white wire, and that one goes to the Z1 terminal on the Banggood potentiometer. I didn't use SP1. Next I come to 10 volt stroke 5 volt. Through the magnifying glass on my terminal block it shows 5 volt, and I've used the brown wire on that one, and that one goes into the Z2 on the Banggood potentiometer. So it goes into Z2 terminal here on the right. Next we have a VL1 stroke C1 terminal. Mine shows VL1 under the magnifying glass, and I've chosen a blue wire for that one, connected that up, and that one goes to the middle terminal on the Banggood 10K potentiometer. Next we have another COM terminal, and I've chosen a black wire for that one, plus the yellow one. I said earlier that I had a spare wire, so I've chosen the yellow to be spare. So I've connected the yellow and black together and connected it to the COM terminal here, and this goes to my terminal block here, which connects all ports together. They're all terminals together, so the yellow and black go into that one. And these are really good because they have small levers. You can get these on Banggood as well. Stick the wire into the hole there and switch the lever over, and that locks the wire into that terminal, and all these 3 terminal ports are connected, so you can actually use it to connect several wires together. So like I say, in my control box on the Mini Lathe, this is my COM terminal block. So next I have the straightforward on and off switch. It's not a no volt release one, like I said, it's just straightforward on and off, and I've chosen the middle terminals on that one, and I've got the red wire on that one, and that connects to the X4 terminal on the VFD. The other port, or the other terminal, I've put the black cable, and that goes to the COM terminal block again. Next I have another on-off switch here which I use for forward and reverse, and I've chosen the green wire for that one, and that one goes into X6 on the VFD. Then I have another black one on the other terminal, another black wire, and that again goes into the common ground block. So using 6 or 7 core different coloured cable like that makes it dead easy to actually wire up and put the wires in the correct places. And I got this on eBay, this cable. It's designed for marine and vehicle use, I think. And it's not solid copper, it's braided copper inside, or the actual ordinary copper wire, like I say. I don't use those copper wires which are solid copper because they tend to actually break. And when you fit this in the machine, when you switch it to forward and reverse, obviously I have the forward pointing towards me from the machine. If it was round the wrong way, when I put that one in. Obviously all you do is slacken the nut off and turn it around the other way to get the relation of the switch right. And that's how easy it is to actually wire up this VFD for an external control box. So now I'll just go back out to the workshop and show you my other VFD and the two parameters that you actually need to change to make these work instead of the control panel on the actual VFD. Right, on my VFD it shows the display flickering there, but in reality it's not, it's just the camera causing that effect. There's just two parameters in the programming mode that need altering, and that is parameter P10, which is the working frequency source, which is the potentiometer, and then P11, which is the start-stop control buttons on the panel here. So what you do is go into programming, go up to parameter 10, press function data, and it gives you the data in that one, which is the default code, which is the panel potentiometer. That's this one here. We want to go over to external analog signal, which is number 2. You can see that on there. So knock that up to number 2, press function data, that inputs that one. Then it goes over to parameter 11, which is the start stop control switch parameter. Press function data on that one and it shows 0, which is the default code for panel keyboard. That's this one here. We want to go over to external port, which is number 2. So press it up to number 2, input that, which is function data there, and that one's set. And then you can press programming to come out of the programming mode. And you can just run through that to check that those have both changed, and you can also try it on the buttons here. Programming, parameter 10, function data. Now it's set at number 2, which is the external analog signal, like I said. P11, and that one's set on number 2, which is the external port. And that's basically it. And when it's correct and in use on the actual control box, like I showed earlier, if you press this one here it won't work at all, or any of these buttons here on the forward and reverse, the run, stop, forward and reverse or whatever, they won't work on this control panel, but they will on the actual machine. And since I've had my VFDs from new, I've been using the control panel on the VFDs, and that's not really practical because you haven't got the emergency stop button close at hand. Plus there's also something else that's really good, and that's the fact that you're not actually using the control panel on the VFD if you have a control box, and therefore you're not wearing the buttons or the potentiometer out on the unit. These here are very low cost from Banggood. They're exceptional quality 10K pots and very low cost to buy, as is the on-off switch. And if one of these goes in the future, it'll be dead easy just to replace that one. And they're so low cost and well made that I actually bought several of these potentiometers to keep as spares. Another thing I'd just like to say, I was a bit apprehensive about changing over to a control box. I thought the wiring on the VFD was going to be a lot harder than it was, and it wasn't until I watched the channel Cliff's Shed and I saw him on there changing the VFD like I've just done with his wood lathe, and saw how easy it was, that I was inspired to get on and do my own. So I'm really pleased that I did so, and I'm really pleased with the way it's turned out. It's made the lathe 10 times better, and it looks absolutely brilliant with this brass all together. It's a really good little machine. And just before I go, I'd just like to mention a really important point about these VFDs. Make sure that you turn them off at the wall and let the digital display go out before you do any wiring work on them at all. It may take up to a couple of minutes for this digital display to go out after turning it off, but that makes it safe when it's actually gone out. Then you can actually do the wiring on this block here. This is a low voltage block, and there's probably no chance of actually getting a shock off of that block. But you could do if you dabbed the wires on any of the other parts of the board in there. And also you could probably damage the sensitive electronics in this VFD if you actually shorted that block out. So be on the safe side. Do all the wiring on the VFD to the control box with the VFD off, and only after checking all the wiring thoroughly again, turn the VFD on to test it. And that way you won't have any problems at all.